I follow a lot of book prizes, and the Aspen Words Literary Prize might just have the best long list released in 2024. It is 14 books long, and I've read 6 of them, and they are all wonderful, which bodes well for the other 8. So I'm going to tell you about all 14 books, but I wanted to tell you just a little bit about this prize before we got started to get you excited about it as well. The current holder of this prize is the amazing Isabella Hammond for her novel Enter Ghost, which was also incredible. The shortlist is announced around March, so you have so much time to read these books if you want to follow along with the prize, and the winner is announced on April the 23rd. The winning author receives $35,000, and this prize is open to authors of all nationalities. So while it's a US prize, it's open to everybody. The award is for fiction with a social impact, which sounds similar to, but not quite the same as, the George Orwell Prize for Fiction in the UK, and some of these books are just wonderful. So let's go through the books on the long list. Mad Woman by Chelsea Beaker is a literary mystery thriller. A gripping story of motherhood and mother loss, and the brutal, mighty things women do to keep themselves and each other alive. Mad Woman marks the arrival of a major fiction talent. The world is not made for mothers, yet mothers made the world. Clove has gone to extremes to keep her past a secret. Thanks to her lies, she lands the life of her dreams, complete with a safe husband and 2 adoring children who will never know the terror that was routine in Clove's childhood. If her buried anxiety threatens to breach the safety, Clove, if that is even her real name, focuses on finding the right supplement, the right gratitude meditation. But when she receives a letter from a woman's prison in California, her past comes screeching into her present, entangling her in a dangerous game with memories and the people she thought she had outrun. As we race between her precarious present-day life in Portland, Oregon, and her childhood in a Waikiki high-rise with her mother and father, Clove is forced to finally unravel the defining day of her life. How did she survive that day, and what will it take to end the cycle of violence? Will the truth undo her, or could it ultimately save her? This book being on the long list is one of the reasons I enjoy following book prizes, because that description has me in 2 minds. It sounds like it could be the sort of book I don't like, but it also sounds like it has the potential to be a book I really love. And for my sake, I hope it lives up to its potential. But because it has been longlisted for this prize and the other books on the prize, I'm going to trust that it is a book that lives up to the potential, and it is the sort of book that I want to read. Sky Full of Elephants by Sibo Campbell. In this exquisite speculative novel set in a world where white people no longer exist, college professor Charlie Burnton receives a call from his estranged daughter Sydney, setting off a chain of events as they journey across a truly post-racial America in search of answers. One day, a cataclysmic event occurs. All the white people in America walk into the nearest body of water. A year later, Charles Burton is a black man living in an entirely new world. Having served time in prison for a wrongful conviction, he is now a professor of electric and solar power systems at Harvard University when he receives a call from somebody he wasn't even sure still existed. His daughter Sydney, a 19-year-old who watched her mother and stepfamily drown themselves in a lake behind their house. Traumatized by the events and terrified by the world outside, Sydney has spent a year in isolation in Wisconsin. Desperate for help, she turns to the father she has never met, a man she has always resented. Sydney and Charlie meet for the first time as they embark on a journey across America headed for Alabama, where Sydney believes she may still have some family left. But neither Sydney nor Charlie is prepared for this world or how they see themselves in it. When they enter the kingdom of Alabama, everything Charlie and Sydney thought they knew about themselves and the world will be turned upside down. Brimming with heart and humour, Sibo Campbell's astonishing debut novel is about the power of community and connection, about healing and self-actualization, and a reckoning with what it means to be black in America, in both their world and in our own. I really want to know where the title for this book comes from. This is another one I'm in 2 minds about. When speculative does literary, it either works really well or it just doesn't. So again, this being on a book prize like this is a really good sign. I sort of read a page or two of this and decided it wasn't for me a couple of months ago, but I might go back to it and give it another chance. Sometimes when you're selecting books, you can be brutal. The next book is James by Percival Everett, and probably the biggest book of 2024. I've definitely already discussed it a lot, so I'm just going to quickly tell you this is a retelling of Huck Finn from the point of view of Jim the slave, and this was the book that Everett was born to write. Nobody else alive could have written a book like this except for Percival Everett, and I'm not really a fan of Percival Everett, but credit where it is due, this book is sublime. Another book on this long list that I thought was amazing is Anita de Monte Last's Laugh by Xochitl Gonzalez. This is based on the life of Ana Mendieta, a promising and emotionally evocative Cuban artist from the 1980s who was murdered by her husband, minimalist artist Carl Andre. Gonzalez has changed Mendieta's name to Anita de Monte in this novel. She has also added a second timeline, that in the late 90s, of an art student named Rochelle who is studying Andre, unaware he killed his wife, or that he even had a wife, or that she was Latina, highlighting the importance of representation and challenging the concept of death of the artist and the importance of acknowledging our past. With themes of domestic violence, toxic relationships, the struggle of women of colour to make it in this world, and biracial relationships and the patriarchy, I think that this is just an absolutely amazing novel that everybody who has a remote interest in either books about race or books about art or books about feminist issues should read. A Great Country by Shipley Somayala Godwa. This is the third book I've read in a row on this long list and I have absolutely loved. This is a novel about the Shah family who move into a wealthy white neighbourhood with their youngest, a 12-year-old boy who is clearly not neurotypical, as well as two older sisters. The boy gets in trouble for flying a drone too near to an airport and is beaten and thrown in jail for adults on account of his size and a combination of profiling and ignorance and racism on the part of the authorities. His two older sisters react differently to their move to the white neighbourhood. One refuses to move to the local high schools, preferring to stay with her friends in a poorer and more multicultural school. She also attends protests and drags her best friend, an unpapered Mexican boy, around, getting into trouble, and is oblivious to the risks she is placing her friend in. The other sister embraces the new life and tries to get ahead, making new friends and climbing the grease pole of popularity and acceptance. The parents are pulled in all directions, trying to be successful Americans without betraying their immigrant roots, all while protecting their three children. A book with a great plot, a great characters, and really well explored themes that all intercept in interesting ways. Kingdom of No Tomorrow by Fabienne Josephat. And we're back to books I haven't read, or in this case I haven't even heard of, although to be fair to me, this one was only published earlier this week. It's that pivotal year, 1968. Annette Boyu, a young Haitian student in Oakland, gets caught up in an ongoing revolutionary fever with her friend Cilla Brown. She uses her public health schools to operate the free clinics created by the people she believes are true revolutionaries, the Black Panthers. When she falls in love with a Black Panther Party defense captain, Melvin Mosley, their passionate love affair soon eclipses all else. Her friendship with Cilla and even her own sense of self. Pregnant, Nettie follows Melvin to Chicago with a newly launched Illinois chapter of the Panthers. But once there, she finds Chicago segregated, police surveillance brutal, and her faith in love erodes as Melvin becomes unfaithful. After a violent tussle, and with the police and the loss of her unborn child, both Nettie and Melvin are caught in the viciousness of J. Edgar Hoover's covert campaigns, and Nettie is soon on the run, desperate to find power in her roots and ultimately to save herself. With richly imagined relatable characters, Kingdom of No Tomorrow tells the story of black love, self-determination, and the importance of revolution in the mind of injustice. Well, like a historical fiction about the Black Panthers, I have to thank the prize for bringing this to my attention, because that's really all I needed to know to be interested. A part of history I know quite little about, being Australian, I suspect, but also this just sounds like a really good story, just touching on a lot of issues, not just the Black Panthers. The Road to the Salt Sea by Samuel Kolawole. This is a story of a young man, Abel God, who works in a Nigerian hotel, but through a series of events involving a sex worker, has to flee and elects to take his chance with people smugglers who are transporting people to Italy in what we all know is a scam, and by we, I'm including Abel God in that equation. What follows is the brutal realities of dealing with people smugglers when profit is your only motivator and you have no fear of the law. What is preventing you from mistreating these people? What is preventing you from trading them? This is a look at the migrant issues from the point of view of the country that they are leaving. It's quite critical of those countries too. Not just Nigeria, but Nigeria does take a lot of the flack in this book. It looks at class, the law, exploitation, and the Nigerian economy that creates so much for some and so little for others. This is the only book on this year's Longlist that I have read but are yet to review on this channel. So make sure you subscribe to get a full review of this book, but another book that I do really recommend. Before the Mango Ripens by Afewaji Kurian. In Rabata, everybody has a secret, especially since the arrival of the white American missionaries. 20-year-old Jemani is a beautiful and unassuming housegirl whose dreams of escaping her home life are disrupted when an unexpected pregnancy forces her to hide her lover's identity. Tobiah, an ambitious Dublin-educated doctor, has left prestigious opportunities abroad to return home to her birth town and discovers a painful betrayal when she strives to take control of the missionary clinic. Zanya is a young translator who is enticed by the promise of progress, who comes to Rabata to escape a bitter past and finds himself embroiled in a fight against the American revered for the heart of the church and town. United by their yearning for change, all three must make difficult decisions that threaten their highly fragile relationship of the Rabata they know. As tension mounts and hypocrisies are unravelled, the people of Rabata are faced with a question that will transform their town. Let the Americans stay or make them go. Set against the backdrop of 1970s Nigeria, teetering between post-colonial dependency and self-rule, Before the Mango Ripens examines the enduring themes of faith, disillusionment, and the search for belonging. This is the most underground novel on this long list. Very few people have read it, but the worst review I can see on Goodreads is 3 stars, while approximately half the readers have given it 5 stars. While it hasn't broken out yet, it looks like a very promising novel that needs a bit of a push, and I hope this book prize can give it, because I can't wait to read this one. Wandering Star by Tommy Orange. The only book that I have read on this year's long list that I didn't unequivocally love. I didn't hate this book either, but it was just good. It was fine, and it probably would have been much better if I had read Orange's first novel, There. This novel being both the prequel and sequel to There. 2 timelines. 1864, Star is a survivor of the Sand Creek Massacre. 2018, and Star's descendant Orville is the survivor of a school shooting. Star's timeline skips ahead rapidly and ends up in the 1960s following his descendants, while Orville's timeline is explored at a much slower pace. One of the things I think Orange wanted to explore was the concept of a ripple in time that travels down the generation, of generational trauma, if you like. I also can't help but to think both Star and Orville have survived very traumatic events, very similar but obviously quite different events as well. It's quite circular, and it really points to a struggle for people to get ahead from a position of disadvantage. There is a Rio Grande in Heaven by Ruben Reyes Jr., an electrifying debut short story collection about Central American identity that spans past, present, and the future worlds to reveal what happens when your life is no longer your own. An ordinary man wakes one morning to discover he's a famous star. An aging abuela slowly morphs into a marionette puppet. A struggling academic discovers the horrific cost of becoming a self-made man. In There is a Rio Grande in Heaven, Ruben Reyes Jr. conjures strange, dreamlike worlds to explore what we would do if we woke up one morning and our lives were unrecognizable. Boundaries between the past, present, and future are all blurred. Menacing technology and unchecked bureaucracy cut through everyday life with uncanny dread. The characters from mango farmers to pop stars to ex-guerrilla fighters to cyborgs are forced to make uncomfortable choices that not only mean life or death, but might also allow them to be heard in a world set on silencing the voices of Central Americans. Blazing with heart, humour and style, There is a Rio Grande in Heaven subverts everything we think we know about migration and its consequences, capturing what it means to take up a new life, whether willfully or forced, with piercing and brilliant clarity. A gifted new storyteller and trailblazing stylist, Reyes not only transports to other worlds, but alerts us to the heartache and injustice of our own. One for the short story fans out there. Lilith by Eric Rickstade. After her son Lyndon suffers traumatic injuries in a school shooting, single mum Elizabeth Ross grows enraged at men in power. If they won't do anything to help this epidemic of violence, she will. Believing it's her destiny, she sets out to awaken the world to the cowards these men are, and commits her own shocking acts of violence. Going by the name Lilith, the first wife of Adam who fled Eden rather than serve a man, she posts a video of her crime that reverberates throughout society. Praised by some, demonized by others, and sought by the FBI and vigilantes alike, Elizabeth must keep her identity a secret as she tries to take care of her son. As events take startling twists, Elizabeth begins to question her acts of violence and the very root and mythology of violence herself. Was her act justified, or has she become the monster that the original Lilith was accused of being? When the FBI draws closer and Lyndon starts to display odd, terrifying behaviour, Elizabeth plots to avoid capture and keep her son safe, fearing she'll never escape what she's done without losing her son forever. Written with Rickstade's singular command of language, human insight, and unnerving suspense, Lilith is a tale of our times, tragic and profound. It echoes in the mind and lingers in the blood. I do love an exploration of when violence is justified and when it isn't. It's that old question of when is somebody a terrorist and when are they an activist. I don't like that the blurb felt it necessary to point out who Lilith was. That sort of makes me cringe for how much explanation the writing might give us, but let's hope that that's the blurb writer and not the author. Fire Exit by Morgan Talty. The blood that came out of me was blood that ran through her veins. It's strange, all blood looks the same, yet it's different, we're told, in so many ways and for so many various reasons. But one thing is for certain, I thought, you are who you are even if you don't know it. From the porch of his home, Charles has watched the life he might have had unfold across the river on Maine's Penobscot Reserve. On the far bank, he caught a brief moment of his neighbour Elizabeth's life, from the day she came home from the hospital to her early 20s, but there's always been something deeper and more dangerous than the river that diverts him from her and the rest of the tribal community. It's the secret that Elizabeth is his daughter, a secret Charles no longer wants to keep. Now it's been weeks since he's seen Elizabeth, and Charles is worried. As he attempts to hold on and care for what he can, his home and property, his alcoholic, quick-tempered and big-hearted friend Bobby, and his mother, Lewis, who is slipping ever deeper into dementia, he becomes increasingly haunted by his past, forced to confront a lost childhood on the reservation, a love affair cut short, and the death of his beloved stepfather Frederick in a hunting accident, a death he and Lewis are at odds over as to where to lay blame. Charles contends with questions he's long been afraid to ask. Is his secret about Elizabeth his to share? And would his daughter want to know the truth, even if it could cost her everything she's ever known? The Safekeep by Yael van der Woden. Not just an amazing book, but one of my absolute favourite reads this year. The Safekeep looks at this relationship between two women. One is the fiancé to the other's brother, stuck in a house together for a month. Beginning with distrust and hostility, it begins to evolve into something else. Then one accuses the other of stealing, but the truth is much more complicated. I recommend reading this book in a real hurry. Enjoy the rush of the plot, and then once you finish, stop and think about everything. Don't ponder it while you're reading it. There are lots of books that have World War II at the centre of them. Some are good, some are not, but none that I have read, and I have read quite a few on this topic, have touched on the themes and issues before that are presented in The Safekeep. None are as unique as this book. If you're unaware of this book and you're wondering why I'm telling you so little about it, it's because this book is so easy to spoil, and you'll have the best experience knowing as little as possible about this book and figuring it all out for yourself as you read this amazing novel. It has a fantastic plot as well as vivid characters and cool themes, but please don't research the plot too much. You don't want it spoiled for you. Devil is Fine by John Voxer. Still reeling from a sudden tragedy, our biracial narrator receives a letter from an attorney. He has just inherited a plot of land from his estranged white grandfather. He travels to a beach town several hours south of his home with the intention of selling the land immediately and moving on. But upon inspection, what lies beneath the dirt is far more complicated than he ever imagined. In a shocking irony, he is now the black owner of a former plantation passed down by the men on his mother's side of the family. Voxer deftly blurs the lines between real and imagined, past and present, tragedy and humour, and fathers and sons in the story of discovery and reclaiming a painful past. With the wit and rawness of Paul Beatty's The Sellout, Devil is Fine is a gripping, surreal, and brilliantly crafted dissection of the legacies we leave behind and those we inherit. Well, that is a really interesting topic, and it's a really good blurb. I'm not necessarily excited to read it, as I just want to keep reading and find out more. I have to keep reading it. I mean, I guess I'm excited too. And that is despite this book being listed as magical realism, the worst of all genres. Now, I wouldn't know about this prize if it weren't for a little video chat with my Patreons. So now is the optimal point in this video to thank my wonderful Patreons for all of their support. 2 videos this week, and for more than one reason, they wouldn't have been possible without my Patreons. This is quite an interesting little long list, and I found quite a few books I'm very excited to read, and I hope you have too. And not only is this a great long list, it's really nice to have a book prize in this part of the year when the book prizes really quiet down and there's not so many to follow. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye bye. He is now a professor of ethics and solar power systems. Whoops, that's wrong. He is now a professor of electric and solar power systems